MTC 202162no18. Dear animal lovers, I am writing on behalf of the Protect Animal Organization. Protect Animal Organization. Our organization was founded on the belief that all animals should be respected and treated with kindness, and must be protected by law. Over the past 20 years, we have provided lost animals with protection, new homes, and sometimes health care. 20. Currently, our animal shelter is full, and we need your help to build a new shelter. We are seeking donations in any amount. Every dollar raised goes to building homes for animals in need. You can donate to us online at www.protectanimal.org. www.protectanimal.org. Thank you for considering supporting us. Sincerely, Stella Anderson. Stella Anderson. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC 202162no19. Dave sat up on his surfboard and looked around. Dev. He was the last person in the water that afternoon. Suddenly something out toward the horizon caught his eye and his heart froze. It was every surfer's worst nightmare, the fin of a shark. And it was no more than 20 meters away. 20. He turned his board toward the beach and started kicking his way to the shore. Shivering, he gripped his board tighter and kicked harder. I'm going to be okay, he thought to himself. I need to let go of the fear. 5 minutes of terror that felt like a lifetime passed before he was on dry land again. 5. Dave sat on the beach and caught his breath. Dev. His mind was at ease. He was safe. He let out a contented sigh as the sun started setting behind the waves. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC 202162no20. Sibling rivalry is natural, especially between strong-willed kids. As parents, one of the dangers is comparing children unfavorably with each other, since they are always looking for a competitive advantage. The issue is not how fast a child can run, but who crosses the finish line first. A boy does not care how tall he is vitally interested in who is tallest. Children systematically measure themselves against their peers on everything from skateboarding ability to who has the most friends. They are especially sensitive to any failure that is talked about openly within their own family. Accordingly, parents who want a little peace at home should guard against comparative comments that routinely favor one child over another. To violate this principle is to set up even greater rivalry between them. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC 202162no21. Author Elizabeth Gilbert tells the fable of a great saint who would lead his followers in meditation. Elizabeth Gilbert. Just as the followers were dropping into their Zen moment, they would be disrupted by a cat that would walk through the temple meowing and bothering everyone. The saint came up with a simple solution. He began to tie the cat to a pole during meditation sessions. This solution quickly developed into a ritual. Tie the cat to the pole first, meditate second. When the cat eventually died of natural causes, a religious crisis followed. What were the followers supposed to do? How could they possibly meditate without tying the cat to the pole? This story illustrates what I call invisible rules. These are habits and behaviors that have unnecessarily rigid feed into rules. Although written rules can be resistant to change, invisible ones are more stubborn. They're the silent killers. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC 202162no22. When it comes to the decision to get more exercise, you are setting goals that are similar to running a half marathon with very little training. You make a decision to buy a gym membership and decide to spend an hour at the gym every day. Well, you might stick to that for a day or two, but chances are you won't be able to continue to meet that commitment in the long term. If, however, you make a commitment to go jogging for a few minutes a day or add a few sit-ups to your daily routine before bed, then you are far more likely to stick to your decision and to create a habit that offers you long-term results. The key is to start small. Small habits lead to long-term success. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC 202162no23. Creativity is a step further on from imagination. Imagination can be an entirely private process of internal consciousness. You might be lying motionless on your bed in a fever of imagination and no one would ever know. Private imaginings may have no outcomes in the world at all. Creativity does. Being creative involves doing something. It would be odd to describe as creative someone who never did anything. To call somebody creative suggests they are actively producing something in a deliberate way. People are not creative in the abstract, they are creative in something, in mathematics, in engineering, in writing, in music, in business, in whatever. Creativity involves putting your imagination to work. In a sense, creativity is applied imagination. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC 202162no24. News reporters are taught to start their stories with the most important information. The first sentence, called the lead, contains the most essential elements of the story. A good lead can convey a lot of information. After the lead, information is presented in decreasing order of importance. Journalists call this the inverted pyramid structure. The most important information, the widest part of the pyramid, is at the top. The inverted pyramid is great for readers. No matter what the reader's attention span, whether she reads only the lead or the entire story, the inverted pyramid maximizes the information she gets. Think of the alternative. If news stories were written like mysteries with a dramatic payoff at the end, then readers who broke off in mid-story would miss the point. Imagine waiting until the last sentence of a story to find out who won the presidential election or the Super Bowl. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC 202162no26. Born in 1895, Carol Ryrie Brink was orphaned by age 8 and raised by her grandmother. 1895 Carol Ryrie Brink 8. Her grandmother's life and storytelling abilities inspired her writing. She married Raymond Woodard Brink, a young mathematics professor she had met in Moscow, Idaho many years before. Idaho Moscow Raymond Woodard Brink. After their son and daughter were born, early in her career, she started to write children's stories and edited a yearly collection of short stories. She and her husband spent several years living in France, and her first novel Anything Can Happen on the River was published in 1934. Anything Can Happen on the River 1934. After that, she wrote more than 30 fiction and non-fiction books for children and adults. 30. She received the Newbery Award in 1936 for Caddy Woodlawn. Caddy Woodlawn 1936 Newbery. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC 202162no29. While working as a research fellow at Harvard, B.F. Skinner carried out a series of experiments on rats, using an invention that later became known as a Skinner box. Harvard, B.F. Skinner box. A rat was placed in one of these boxes, which had a special bar fitted on the inside. Every time the rat pressed this bar, it was presented with food. The rate of bar pressing was automatically recorded. Initially, the rat might press the bar accidentally, or simply out of curiosity, and as a consequence receive some food. Over time, the rat learned that food appeared whenever the bar was pressed, and began to press it purposefully in order to be fed. Comparing results from rats given the positive reinforcement of food for their bar pressing behavior with those that were not, or were presented with food at different rates, it became clear that when food appeared as a consequence of the rat's actions, this influenced its future behavior. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC 202162No30. Let's return to a time in which photographs were not in living color. During that period, people referred to pictures as photographs rather than black and white photographs as we do today. The possibility of color did not exist, so it was unnecessary to insert the adjective black and white. However, suppose we did include the phrase black and white before the existence of color photography. By highlighting that reality, we become conscious of current limitations and thus open our minds to new possibilities and potential opportunities. World War I was given that name only after we were deeply embattled in World War II. 1-2. Before that horrific period of the 1940s, World War I was simply called the Great War or, even worse, the War to End All Wars. 1940. 1. What if we had called it World War I back in 1918? 19181? Such a label might have made the possibility of a second worldwide conflict a greater reality for governments and individuals. We become conscious of issues when we explicitly identify them. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC 202162No31. The tendency for one purchase to lead to another one has a name, the Diderot effect. Diderot. The Diderot effect states that obtaining a new possession often creates a spiral of consumption that leads to additional purchases. Diderot. You can spot this pattern everywhere. You buy a dress and have to get new shoes and earrings to match. You buy a toy for your child and soon find yourself purchasing all of the accessories that go with it. It's a chain reaction of purchases. Many human behaviors follow this cycle. You often decide what to do next based on what you have just finished doing. Going to the bathroom leads to washing and drying your hands, which reminds you that you need to put the dirty towels in the laundry, so you add laundry detergent to the shopping list, and so on. No behavior happens in isolation. Each action becomes a cue that triggers the next behavior. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC 202162No32. While leaders often face enormous pressures to make decisions quickly, premature decisions are the leading cause of decision failure. This is primarily because leaders respond to the superficial issue of a decision rather than taking the time to explore the underlying issues. Bob Carlson is a good example of a leader exercising patience in the face of diverse issues. Bob Carlson. In the economic downturn of early 2001, Real Precision Manufacturing faced a 30% drop in revenues. 2001, Real Precision Manufacturing 30. Some members of the senior leadership team favored layoffs and some favored salary reductions. While it would have been easy to push for a decision or call for a vote in order to ease the tension of the economic pressures, as CEO, Bob Carlson helped the team work together and examine all of the issues. Bob Carlson. The team finally agreed on salary reductions, knowing that, to the best of their ability, they had thoroughly examined the implications of both possible decisions. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC 202162no33. When self-handicapping, you're engaging in behavior that you know will harm your chances of succeeding. You know that you won't do as well on the test if you go out the night before, but you do it anyway. Why would anyone intentionally harm their chances of success? Well, here's a possible answer. Say that you do study hard. You go to bed at a decent time and get 8 hours of sleep. 8. Then you take the maths test, but don't do well, you only get a C. C. What can you conclude about yourself? Probably that you're just not good at maths, which is a pretty hard blow to your self-esteem. But if you self-handicap, you'll never be in this position because you're creating a reason for your failure. You were bound to get a C, you can tell yourself, because you went out till 1 a.m. 1 C. That C doesn't mean that you're bad at maths, it just means that you like to party. C. Self-handicapping seems like a paradox, because people are deliberately harming their chances of success. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC 202162no34. Early in the term, our art professor projected an image of a monk, his back to the viewer, standing on the shore, looking off into a blue sea and an enormous sky. The professor asked the class, "What do you see?" The darkened auditorium was silent. We looked and thought as hard as possible to unearth the hidden meaning, but came up with nothing. We must have missed it. With dramatic exasperation she answered her own question, "It's a painting of a monk. His back is to us. He is standing near the shore. There's a blue sea and enormous sky. Why didn't we see it?" So as not to bias us, she'd posed the question without revealing the artist or title of the work. In fact, it was Caspar David Friedrich's The Monk by the Sea. Caspar David Friedrich, The Monk by the Sea. To better understand your world, consciously acknowledge what you actually see rather than guess at what you think you are supposed to see. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC 202162no35. An interesting phenomenon that arose from social media is the concept of social proof. It's easier for a person to accept new values or ideas when they see that others have already done so. If the person they see accepting the new idea happens to be a friend, then social proof has even more power by exerting peer pressure as well as relying on the trust that people put in the judgments of their close friends. For example, a video about some issue may be controversial on its own but more credible if it got thousands of likes. If a friend recommends the video to you, in many cases, the credibility of the idea it presents will rise in direct proportion to the trust you place in the friend recommending the video. This is the power of social media and part of the reason why videos or posts can become viral. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC 202162no36. Consider the story of two men quarreling in a library. One wants the window open and the other wants it closed. They argue back and forth about how much to leave it open, a crack, halfway, or 3/4 of the way. 4-3. No solution satisfies them both. Enter the librarian. She asks one why he wants the window open, to get some fresh air. She asks the other why he wants it closed, to avoid a draft. After thinking a minute, she opens wide a window in the next room, bringing in fresh air without a draft. This story is typical of many negotiations. Since the parties' problem appears to be a conflict of positions, they naturally tend to talk about positions, and often reach an impasse. The librarian could not have invented the solution she did if she had focused only on the two men's stated positions of wanting the window open or closed. Instead, she looked to their underlying interests of fresh air and no draft. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC 202162no37. In one survey, 61% of Americans said that they supported the government spending more on assistance to the poor. 61%. But when the same population was asked whether they supported spending more government money on welfare, only 21% were in favor. 21%. In other words, if you ask people about individual welfare programs, such as giving financial help to people who have long-term illnesses and paying for school meals for families with low income, people are broadly in favor of them. But if you ask about welfare, which refers to those exact same programs that you've just listed, they're against it. The word welfare has negative connotations, perhaps because of the way many politicians and newspapers portray it. Therefore, the framing of a question can heavily influence the answer in many ways, which matters if your aim is to obtain a true measure of what people think. And next time you hear a politician say surveys prove that the majority of the people agree with me, be very wary. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC 202162no38. Risk often arises from uncertainty about how to approach a problem or situation. One way to avoid such risk is to contract with a party who is experienced and knows how to do it. For example, to minimize the financial risk associated with the capital cost of tooling and equipment for production of a large, complex system, a manufacturer might subcontract the production of the system's major components to suppliers familiar with those components. This relieves the manufacturer of the financial risk associated with the tooling and equipment to produce these components. However, transfer of one kind of risk often means inheriting another kind. For example, subcontracting work for the components puts the manufacturer in the position of relying on outsiders, which increases the risks associated with quality control, scheduling, and the performance of the end item system. But these risks often can be reduced through careful management of the suppliers. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC 202162no39. Ransom Olds, the father of the Oldsmobile, could not produce his horseless carriages fast enough. Oldsmobile, Ransom Olds. In 1901 he had an idea to speed up the manufacturing process. Instead of building one car at a time, he created the assembly line. 1901. The acceleration in production was unheard of, from an output of 425 automobiles in 1901 to an impressive 2,500 cars the following year. 19014252,500. While other competitors were in awe of this incredible volume, Henry Ford dared to ask, "Can we do even better?" Henry Ford. He was, in fact, able to improve upon Olds's clever idea by introducing conveyor belts to the assembly line. Olds. As a result, Ford's production went through the roof. Ford. Instead of taking a day and a half to manufacture a Model T, as in the past, he was now able to spit them out at a rate of one car every 90 minutes. Model T 1.590. The moral of the story is that good progress is often the herald of great progress. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC 202162no40. Anne Thorndike, a primary care physician in Boston, had a crazy idea. Boston 1, Anne Thorndike. She believed she could improve the eating habits of thousands of hospital staff and visitors without changing their willpower or motivation in the slightest way. In fact, she didn't plan on talking to them at all. Thorndike designed a study to alter the choice architecture of the hospital cafeteria. Thorndike. She started by changing how drinks were arranged in the room. Originally, the refrigerators located next to the cash registers in the cafeteria were filled with only soda. She added water as an option to each one. Additionally, she placed baskets of bottled water next to the food stations throughout the room. Soda was still in the primary refrigerators, but water was now available at all drink locations. Over the next 3 months, the number of soda sales at the hospital dropped by 11.4%. 11.4. Meanwhile, sales of bottled water increased by 25.8%. 25.8. MTC. Good job.